So I was working a little bit on this sand stuff, the sand shader. Just trying to finish this up. I'm still planning it out, how I'm going to break down the tutorial and stuff like that. So I'm planning to do like a proper offline tutorial with for YouTube. There's like some weird stuff happening at the end of this when he falls. There's some sizzling or puddle or something like that. Yeah, so basically I'm trying to break this down and do like a higher quality offline tutorial that doesn't have the nonsense, the long form discussions that we have on Twitch. So it's just more easy to digest, or easy, hopefully it will be easy to for other blogs and stuff to promote it or pass it around and help kind of build this community. But it's all kind of concepts that we were playing around with earlier, like that face when I was dropping it on the ground to have it crumble. That's kind of this progression of that idea. And then it was also a mixture of that wind Ulai idea that I had with the guy, the mocap geo blowing away. So it's a similar idea. Yeah, I'm trying to get a little bit more clumps. I think it helps a lot when they fall apart, like not having it just go into a blob, like seeing some structures and stuff like that. And then I was also using like I'll go through it more in the tutorial and stuff, but I was building like a SDF, or like the distance field from this guy, kind of like we did with the bubbles. Stasha, how's it going? So basically when this guy is chipping away, like instead of doing it using the Y position, I did a bit of that so I could like at the start just chip away from the feet area, like he's leaving a path or walking or whatever. And then at the top, instead of doing like a linear just wipe where the whole silhouette gets erased or deleted or whatever, what I was starting to do was do it based off of the distance from the SDF, the volume sample or whatever, very similar to what we were doing with those bubbles, to use the distance to find out whether they're inside or outside and all that stuff. So that way you could kind of like shave off and activate different layers of his form, like a skeleton, or I don't know. I was thinking it would be cool to have actual like skeleton rig bones going on inside of this or whatever. But I felt like then it was just turning into like a full project or a full like just trying to start doing a tutorial and then you just end up building out like a whole sequence or something. It's just too much for that. But yeah, I'm still working on this shader a little bit. I was doing the kind of like the Piper technique or whatever, if you guys are familiar with that Pixar thing. I think I was talking about it yesterday. This is the link for it, but just seeing the detail and stuff like that they went into this kind of stuff preparing it. This is kind of what I was trying to replicate with Redshift. That kind of idea of just having some different shaders, different instances of little rocks. Yeah, for close-ups, it's pretty nice. I don't know. I'm still not. I really like this look right here. I'm trying to get. I don't know if I need more like broader specular, or my lighting I think is still a little bit messed up. But yeah, just overall, this breakdown is super cool to read about how they were doing bubble, foam, whitewater, like just how they approach all that stuff is super interesting to read those kind of breakdowns and stuff like that. Yeah, so hopefully I'll finish that pretty soon. It's taking me longer than I thought, just rendering stuff and iterating and like streamlining the approach is taking longer, but I think it's better to distribute something that's super polished and super thought out instead of like a bit sloppy or whatever. So, oh my goodness, what happened here? I think I was trying to change my splash screen or something. Alright, I'll do that later. Alright. So we'll pop open the old scene file from yesterday. The attraction, RBD attraction, if you go to the Discord server, under the stream archive, there's the files from all the old streams. You could open it up from there if you're interested in like following along. I don't know, sometimes it's a bit hard to follow along with streams just because like people move the network editor around, and if you miss like one parameter or one thing, you're kind of stuck out of the thing forever. To Spake, how's it going? Sorry I didn't see your comment earlier. Do you have any experience with Arnold? If you do, how does it compare to Redshift? I was using Arnold, but it was before they made their GPU implementation. It was like right when they started supporting Houdini. It might have been version 2.5 of Arnold or something like that. I think it's good. It just, from what I've heard and read, the GPU stuff isn't that far along yet. Like, it's not fully polished, or I don't know. So that's why it seemed like so many people jumped with Redshift, just because it was like the first Houdini plugin that was like pretty stable and cheap and pretty easy to pick up or whatever. But just overall, I think Arnold's a really good renderer. Like, you could get probably some of the best results out of it. The image quality is probably like better than Redshift, but just with implementation and speed and stuff, I don't know if it's there yet. But I haven't tested it recently, so it's hard for me to say. So I'll just clean this stuff up. Yeah, I would just say overall, like with all the renders and stuff that are available, like just pick whichever one you think will be fast and easy for you to use and stick with it for a while. It's easy to get lost, like downloading, installing, configuring different renders and learning them and stuff, and all that changes so quickly that you're just doing a bunch of like technical busy work. But I don't know. My advice would be just to worry more about training your eye and figuring out what looks good. And all the renderers are using pretty much the same like PBR shading models and doing the same path tracing stuff. So it's not like learning one will hamper you, like you won't be able to figure out others going forward. It's once you learn one renderer like pretty well, that knowledge is pretty easy to go from a different one. So we have our shape, and we were just doing points from volume to fill it with fracture points, and then doing the Voronoi fracture. I was doing some scaling here to move the fracture points around. I'm probably just going to delete those and I don't know, maybe do a different type of fracture pattern or something like that. And we'll do a real geometry or something a bit more interesting than a box or a sphere. Let me see what I have going on in my geo folder. Maybe this Asaro head? This is something I think I found on MakerBot, or it was like one of the websites where people post the 3D printing stuff. It's like for sketching references and stuff, I think. Like people would draw this head because it's kind of low resolution or whatever. You could study like shading and the way that the light hits the different areas of the forehead and stuff like that. So This one seems pretty good. It's might be a bit high res. Sometimes if you're gonna fracture stuff, you want to make like a proxy of it, just to work more quickly. There's ways to rebind or like reapply the same stuff to the high res at the end. So just setting stuff up, it's usually a good idea to de-res or down-res or whatever you want to do. I think this remesh, you can get good results. Going to adaptive edge lengths, like that will try to preserve the curvature. The high frequency areas. So we're going from 152,000 points to 34,000. 24 megabytes was we got a bigger file size. I don't know if that's because we changed the amount of polygons. I'm not sure. Might just be the way that this is thinking about memory. Like, I don't know. That SOP usage of memory isn't always indicative of like file size memory. We might be able to go, I think with this relative density, we want, I'm gonna do a lower number to try to get like lower resolution, I think is kind of what this is saying. And then I think if you do more iterations, it will be a bit slower, but you can get a bit more optimized, or like a better representation of the geo. You could do poly reduce. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that do this kind of operation. The remesh, it can be nice because it gives you like a very nice topology. The poly reduce, I think it's usually a bit quicker. Usually I just start with like 1%, just keep 1% of the points. But sometimes you just have some gnarly faces or stuff like that happening. The topology, I mean, I'm really like kind of thrashing it down a bit, but I don't know, sometimes you get some weird areas. It's definitely up to you for which situation you're doing things. And then you can always just do as well VDB from polygons. I might be working at a weird scale here. I don't know how big this head is. Shouldn't be that big. Sometimes this VDB from polygons, it runs just a bit slow with high resolution point counts or whatever. So if you just get it somewhere close, this is kind of just rasterizing it, like if you use Photoshop or whatever, and then go back to polygons or go back to polygon soup, kind of like vectorize if you're going back to Illustrator now, and then this adaptivity can be nice. It's like a funky cyborg type of guy. So this will kind of do what the remesh adaptivity is trying to do, and basically the flatter areas, it will use less polygons for that. So you could do maybe 0.2 or something like that. I'm just gonna link it back up to the source. It looks like Deadpool. Yeah, it's like I don't know, it's an interesting pattern. It's like a bit tribal, but also a bit cybernetic or something like that. But yeah, just playing around with that adaptivity, you get interesting kind of quad flows and stuff like that. So this is 10,000, 20,000, and 7,000. So we're all kind of in the same range. It just depends which one suits your needs the best or whatever. All of these will try to preserve the silhouette, like the hard edges, as well as they can. So it just depends more on like the kind of topology you're the most interested in or whatever. So I might stick with this remesh. Just seems like the topology is the cleanest if I'm going to fracture it and do some other stuff with it. Sometimes it's a bit hard to see the points that you're scattering. Like some of these nodes, they force you to have a guide geometry on. If you just make a null node underneath it and visualize it with that, then you can see what's going on a little bit easier. So the higher resolution, the more edges or polygons your fracture geometry has, and then the more chunks that you're trying to make, the slower. Both of those contribute to like the slowness of this cutting process. So I think this one might be like 1,000 points or something. So it's generally, I don't know, it might take one or 2 minutes or something like that. You might have to bail out if it keeps taking longer. Looks like we got it. Yeah, so this is like a 48-second cook. It's a bit too slow. Let's just do I'll just do this attribute randomize, and if you set it to primitives, this one here is converting stuff to packed primitives. I should be getting different colors. I don't know. Something went wrong. Maybe this one has to be points. Let's try this. Sometimes this viewport with packed primitives, it just has issues displaying colors. I don't know what's going on with it today. But that's one way to visualize stuff. Maybe it's because, I don't know. Let's just go a bit higher with this point separation. So we should be getting a quicker cook, quicker feedback with stuff. Maybe this is kind of nice to have some order or structure with our fractured points. But if we want to just add a little bit of kind of chaos or randomness, we can just scatter points, 25 points or something on the surface. And merge them with the kind of structured, organized distribution of points. So now we have both of those happening at once. So then you'll just get some offset in your fracture cells, some interesting like jagged, a little bit more organic. So it's kind of, I don't know, we're going between a cybernetic guy and a completely like organic or somewhat organic type of fracture pattern. Why is it so slow? I don't know. It's kind of... I don't think it should be that slow, but it might just be making... It might be because I'm doing reload, you think? We could try that. I am saving some stuff out in the background for that Sandman tutorial stuff. So it might be slowing down my session because of that as well. Typically you want to really reduce the SimGeo and transform the high-res later. Yeah, I reduced it a little bit, but we could probably even go lower just for better performances. So this, we'll just start it with version 4. And get a new thing. This error is like pretty suspect with Houdini. It seems like whenever you have a file that's behaving erratically, this it just keeps spitting out this error message for whatever reason. So we get that other file back open again. I think Steve GH is right that we should just add another operation to keep reducing the polygons even lower. Maybe getting close to... Just gonna hit escape to cancel what it's doing, loading this. But I think maybe getting close to like 1,000. I think we were at like 10,000 points on our source geometry. So it's just trying to cancel that, for whatever reason, it takes a while to cancel the cook of that Voronoi split. So another thing that we can do is just keep adding these together. Sometimes you get a bit better topology if you do like a poly, just a remesh and then the poly reduce. So if we really want to go quickly, we could try starting with this. So now this is pretty much happening instantaneously or whatever. It looks like our colors, something's still going on with that. I don't know what it is. Yeah, so let's just go into the complex, somewhat complex simulation. Over here, we could just kind of get caught back up. One of the things I was thinking about was like this activation parameter that I was using to enable and disable forces. It's probably not the best way to work. So I'm going to try to replace those with like more of a procedural manner of controlling these forces. Basically, it's just starts to become a really big pain when you have a setup and you have to go to like 20 different nodes to adjust start and end times for a simulation or an effect to give you like nice kind of results. Yeah, you can color, then unpack and attribute transfer and stuff, but it just like it's worked before with color, just using a random point color. I think it's just a viewport attribute or something. It's not a really big deal right now. So this one is just a noise force, kind of curl noise, blow stuff all over, kind of like a wind or something like that. This guy, we had it set up to get the input or like source pre-simulated position, and we're attracting or pulling it back to that start position after a frame. This one, we're just applying some resistance. So basically we were pulling something back to its position, but then it would overshoot and keep bouncing. So this drag or air resistance tries to counteract that and stabilize the final position a bit quicker. the pop drag spin is, this one is just kind of doing the similar thing as rotational stiffness, but it just seems to be a bit better to apply it this way instead of on the bullet object. This one we were just disabling collisions, so when we wanted it to reassemble, if you don't worry about other things like clicking in and out, like you'll never really be able to properly fit things without like super advanced logic, like more than just adding forces. So this kind of solves that issue. And then this one is just moving the alignment or the spinning, moving the orient attribute so that it's back to its input position. And then this one over here is kind of our master control. So we're doing this color, point color, and using that to control the position, the active color, but it's also getting used after the simulation to do this like final snap to get everything back into just like sealing the cracks, just making sure it's exactly using the input or these rest position coordinates. I was deleting that, but I'm going to use it again. So debugging RBD simulations, sometimes you just want to view the points directly and see what kind of values they're giving you. So I'll just pin the view up at this object or SOP level and go into here. So then when I play it, we can take a look at the mask and see like when things are turning black or white according to this node. This is the one that's setting, just do it, CD mask. And that's pretty much it. You could take a look. This is somewhat procedural in the sense that we can plug any shape into it and still get a pretty solid animation. So this is what I was saying with the stuff at the end, just to make sure that it fits perfectly. So I was thinking, we're already using this color for some stuff. It might be nice to kind of expand on that. And instead of like generating it just using this distance, if we wanted to generate it using a noise or hand animated or something like that, then it would be a lot easier to control things instead of using this $FF and all these comparisons. So one of the things is I'm just going to set this up using SOPs. So it's just a bit easier to animate, set up noises and procedurally work with stuff up here. So if I just do maybe attribute VOP, should be good. We could template it. I just want to, I'm worried about the colors right now. Let me see if this, maybe it's the material. Yeah, I don't know. So if we just do it like this, we just do disks. It's just a bit easier to see what's going on. We can get this relative point to bounding box. So this will just tell you, it kind of normalizes the colors to be within 0 and 1 for each axis. So with X, you have a gradient, or just a ramp. With Y, you have the same ramp. And with Z, or RGB, the same idea. So instead of these being centered at 0 and then going negative and and all that. This is normalized to just always go from 0 and 1 to the extents of your geometry. So if you're doing, could get vector to float to split out these components, and then if you just do something like compare, we do greater than. This is a simple way to, maybe we want to do it by y. This is a simple way to just activate or deactivate things over time. So what I'm trying to set up here is just some SOP level animations to somewhat procedurally just using expressions and vex or vops to toggle or turn on and turn off the points. So this color value is going to be our controller for, yes, it's a classic trick. It's a bit of like a veteran move. I don't know if there's newer and better ways to do things, but this is a very tried and true method to do things. You could do, basically, you could do it with any kind of operation. So like if we don't want this linear wipe or something, we can do it using something just noise. And then if you just compare against the noise value, it starts at negative numbers, so you just have to worry a bit about that. But then you could like spatially erode or turn on or turn off the points. So we might want to play with that as well. But yeah, I just like doing this up at SOPs. This way you could control different nodes, and it's a bit easier to visualize without having to run the simulation. So if you tried to do this using like expressions and code inside of the simulation, it just gets a bit cumbersome. Ever used an expression on PY, PZ or something? I have. I don't know what kind of expression you're interested in trying. Usually I would do like a sine or something like that on those. So another thing that you can do is maybe just like the length. So this is just distance from, right now it's from the origin. As things get further away or closer, they'll turn on or off. I don't know if there's a better way. Maybe this might be a bit easier to visualize what I'm saying. It's not exactly what's going to be happening because we're working with the packed RBDs. I usually use an expression for that. Yeah, I mean you can use expressions if you like, just to do it very quickly. I usually tend to do this. It takes a bit more time to set up, but just I know that I'm going to want to like have more control over this type of stuff. So like you can start to work kind of like a compositor, writing a shader or something. Like I could combine these different masks, multiply them or add them together and do stuff like that to really art direct. It's pretty much what I was doing with this, like starting kind of, I'd isolated the lower area and said like start chipping away there, and then starting at the top, then you could start to really control where people's eye goes when they're looking like at the effect and what's happening or whatever. So this is usually just why I don't know, it's a bit robust, too robust maybe, but it's nice to have all the control you need. So this length is looking pretty good. Like, I think could be cool. Like it starts at his eyes or forehead or something, and then the rest of him will get released into the simulation. So we'll just try to set that up and see how it works. Keep them gems coming. Yeah, so let's try to implement this. So I was visualizing it on the actual geometry, but I think it's going to be better to set this up just on the packed primitive points. This way, if you want to, in here we were getting like the point position, the p-value of the input geometry. You can grab the color value using the same method, and even like animated values, like it will pull it in at the current frame. So you don't need to worry about updating it that way or whatever. This simulation, the PackedRBD object, this will only read or source the geometry at the first frame, but anytime you reference geometry with this vex stuff, this will always update at the current frame or the current time. So you can pull in animated values and stuff with these, which is nice. So let's just set up some animation. If we want to add keyframes, you usually want to promote parameters. Just the way that VOPs work, you can't really set keyframes inside of this thing because you're kind of like writing a program. It doesn't support keyframes. So we'll just start with 0. Everything will be white or have a value of 1. And then if I go 48 frames, 2 seconds in, we could... Yeah, I don't know, these color attributes aren't working in terms of visualizing them. We could go up so all of them get activated. We just go a bit higher, like 3.5 to be safe or something like that. So if I play it, now you can see over time we have the colors changing or things activating. Maybe I'm just gonna wire it up like this. So if I want to visualize the color, I'll just use this node. You can also do it using like the spreadsheet if you want to make sure that things... Whoops, where did it go? If you want to make sure that numbers are changing and stuff like that, you can use this spreadsheet. It just depends. I tend to prefer like visual debugging or visual methods, so that's why I mostly hide that geometry spreadsheet. So originally we were doing a bunch of distance stuff to change the active state and the position and stuff. I'm just gonna get rid of all of that for right now, and do another color. And just set it equal to the color CD, color diffuse attribute from the input geometry. And then right here I can turn off this activation, the animation of it at least, or the keyframe, or the expression. I'm just gonna do that throughout. So sometimes if you're developing effects or simulations or stuff like that, you might set stuff up super sloppily or super lazy to kind of validate the idea to see if it's a worthwhile method or avenue to achieve what you're trying to do. And then if it does work, then you might kind of do what I'm doing right now and just rewire stuff to make it a bit more controllable and just easier to manage. So it's kind of what my idea is with getting rid of those expressions. It's just super difficult, frustrating to keep updating them or whatever. So you want to make your simulations like as easy and fun to tweak as possible. So now we have this color attribute, and it goes from 1 and 0. We're kind of treating that like the released state or free. So with this force here, you can use this vex expression now and take this amplitude or amp And then if I do times equals cd.x, this will just get the one component. Just gonna disable all that stuff for right now. Just the x component or the red channel, just one value from the color. So you'd see we've kind of flipped this around right now. So when the color changes, the stuff would stop moving, like we would be multiplying by 0. So you can just flip this number around by doing the 1 minus. It's just a simple math invert or whatever operation. So this way we're not releasing or splitting our things until that color changes. Then I could do it. This one already has the unpack transferred, so we could just use this maybe to visualize things, and it would be a bit easier. It seems a bit buggy, like it was only selected. I don't know, it was just updating it a bit funky the other way. We might want to switch to the light background. Sometimes that's a bit easier to see the two colors on or whatever. So we have this doing what we want to do, just using this expression. So I'll just copy it. Now let's try to implement or work with the pop attract. So we're already doing something here with this force scale. I wanted to do something similar, so I changed what I'm doing with the color. So we want force scale, and we want to only apply it when the color, I guess we haven't really implemented this state yet. This would be like a third. So we're going from white to black just to release stuff. So I don't know if let me think this through here. So I'm thinking we need like a third color or a third state or something like that to say the different conditions that we want to apply here. So we'll just go in and add something here. So I'm gonna do this vector, float to vector. I'm gonna start working with the red channel and then the blue channel. And I'll just add another compare. You could do maybe add constant. So I'm just going to shift the result of this noise so that it goes between 0 and 1 instead of negative 0.5 and negative 0.5 and 0.5. So this way we can do an animation for the blue channel. And then we have our animation already happening with the red channel. So maybe at frame 96, we'll go from 0 to 1 with the blue channel. So we're kind of going like the CMYK or this weird multicolored man This is just a visualization. We don't really need to worry too much about the other stuff, like what our color palette actually looks like or whatever. So this way, instead of cd.x, we could look at this blue channel here. This will be cd.z. And then you can see we're going from 1 to 0 as well. So instead of x, we just do z. And basically that will just mask this value out by only applying it once that condition animation slider turns on. It's working. It's not working super well, but it's not looking great, but it's working perfectly. It's doing what we want it to do. So now we just need to step back and do the same thing with this drag. So you could just copy this. We're basically doing the inverse of the blue color and the blue channel. And multiplying it. So this is saying only do 25 units or 25 amount of air resistance when that color channel changes. I probably should have made these keyframes a bit earlier or something. Everything's a bit slow right now. Could do maybe, I don't know if this will... I think the unpack operation and some other stuff like that might be... you just get rid of this color. Sometimes it's a bit slower playing back stuff with this unpack because it has to modify or like change the geometry every frame. So it looks like it's working. I'm just gonna go in with these keyframes and make them a bit quicker so that we don't have to simulate or play stuff as long. So something like that should be a bit more snappy. And the next thing we want to do is work with this alignment. So again, we have these torque and spin resist, and we can just do the same idea with them. So torque and spin resist. So this is kind of what I was talking about before with that. That's the reason why I was disabling collisions. Basically, there's no logic built in with these pieces to say like this one has to assemble before this one, so it can just run into issues where it's one is not rotated properly or something. So if we do implement this disable collision, then we can get that working as well. So I think this one's a bit trickier because it's expecting a string data type. This is like a mask saying asterisk is everything. So I think what we can basically do is just say if this invert of the color, we could probably just not invert it this time to make it a bit clearer. If it's less than 0.5, then we want to add this string attribute to the geometry. I guess that in production, when you have a lot of cuts, you can hide some problem areas as well. Yeah, it depends. If you wanted to, you could hide some areas, or like I could do something else here with this collision ignore, where certain ones that aren't facing the camera are occluded. They could be, the collisions for them could be ignored. So like if you're doing an actual like shot that you wanted stuff to kind of bump into each other as it's reassembling, like the area of interest, you could only let those collide, but other stuff, like that's a pretty regular trick that people use, is kind of just faking forces, and even you could even like hand animate some stuff off screen or like in the background or whatever that doesn't need to behave as like physically accurate or whatever. So it just looks like getting stuff back together, we weren't using enough strength. So just with this attract force, just gonna go up to 85, and then to get rid of some of the jiggling, I think with this air resistance, you could try going up to like 95. So it's pretty good, but the drag is seems a bit off. Trying to think what the best way is to fix that. I might do something funky. I don't know about this. So I'm gonna do a weird thing here with these double rests. Looks a bit confusing, but basically this rest is storing the rest like physically on these points before they're packed. So each point position is storing its coordinate, and then when this packs everything, basically we just have points at the centroid of each piece. That's how packed geometry works. With Houdini, it's just using a more optimized way. So then you lose access to the attributes that are on the points. So what I'm doing with this rest is just adding an additional rest, and these values are actually different because this is kind of the centroid or the pivot of each piece, whereas this is the physical kind of proper location of the pieces. So the reason I'm doing this, let me just get this back to normal. Basically with this air resistance, I also want to, I think this was the main thing that this distance stuff was helping me with. I'm gonna do this in another line. Should be easier to read that way. So I'm just attaching the rest attribute to the geometry so it's a bit easier to access. I could do it using this and then reference like the input, but sometimes it's just easier to work this way. So this is just an additional mask that I'm going to apply. So we have a few different conditions or a few different things that are driving this air resistance. The one is just this simple mask that is saying either on or off, 1 or 0 pretty much. And then this is trying to ramp up or only apply a lot of air resistance once the pieces get really close to their destination. So this is just a bit more controlled drag. Basically, like the closer I'm getting to the final position, the more things should push back against it. Instead of the other way, it was just always constantly applying a certain value to things. So things were whipping around a little bit. With that one, it might have been a bit too much. Or it might have been my attraction. Let's try this. I think I need more of the air resistance. So these are just saying when it's 0 or matches where it needs to be, apply all of this drag, and when it's 0.5 units away or further, don't apply any drag at all. So we're able to further art direct or control that drag force. Hey, Naranjos, how's it going? So I'm just gonna play with these values a little bit, try to get something a bit better. You can do something as well with this force scale to do like the distance-based scale, but I think what we have here should be pretty good. Let's just see how things look with the final touch put on. I think I just need to change that. Could you make pieces go crazy and spin, or they wouldn't assemble then? You can, yeah, I'm just trying to... So this one I was using the color as well. Yeah, we could get it a little crazy. I'm just gonna fix this. These values I think were not the best to use. I'm just gonna take the same fit function that I was doing here. So I think this stuff, I just need it to be a bit wider of a range. You're back, Abstract Landscapes. See you again. You were watching that really old stream? It was like in January of this year or something, right? Yeah, we should probably redo it or polish it. My setup wasn't the best back then. I think like certain portions of it got muted because of the audio licensing things or something like that. So if we want to add some craziness to this. One thing we could do is just higher amplitude for the curl noise, or just the wind noise, and then this pop spin. This one might, I think it's just a bit too high. And I think one thing we can do as well is like maybe inherit velocity from point velocity. This way, if I just do an attribute randomize with V for the velocity, look at it here with this visualization. Maybe direction or orientation. Then you can see we just have random velocity vectors on the points. So it's already added them. It's just probably a bit too strong. So it might have gotten out of hand a little bit too much. Not sure if it's because let me kill some of this other stuff for now. You guys think it's because I don't know if it's because stuff is stopping. Seems like something's wrong with my attraction. Like they're just coming in for a landing too hot. They don't have enough time to deaccelerate. I think it's the collision mask. Yeah, so I am trying to turn off collisions. But there should be, might be the maybe this collision mask, we should have a better way of turning it on or off. Too late. It seems to work better with it because it's like, I guess it's something for them to hit and push back against. So it's kind of working as like a stopper for them, which is kind of nice. Let's try this. Oof. Maybe try this orbit speed. See what happens with it. This is the kind of stress testing of a setup, like pounding on it with a hammer to make sure it still works. Yeah, it looks like some of the stuff that gets really far away, we might want to try to do something with it. Maybe just saying that the further you are from where you need to be or where you started from, the more force you should apply. That's kind of what we're saying with that. So I think that number is a bit high. Basically because we're using the raw distance, or we're not using a fit function or anything like that. These numbers out here would be like 25 or 100 or something. It might just be too strong. Got like some boomerangs or something like that. So I think I'm also going to change this drag just to give it a bigger region, like a bigger window to deaccelerate. And then I think to get rid of some of the ones that are really zoom in, I just maybe do a speed limit and just say your maximum speed, maybe 7. Just try a few different units. You already see we're keeping stuff like a little bit closer to the origin that way. So I think this pop attract, we're basically killing it too much when the distance is too close. The amount we're applying is too small. So I might just want to add this. So we already have some existing attraction force present even when they're very close to them. So I think we're getting better for reassembling it now. Let me think. Maybe with this, if you do this two ampersands, then you can do an additional test. So we might want to say if this color value, the blue channel is less than 0.5 and the distance is less than 0.25, then disable collisions. We'll see how it works. Some of these guys can't find where they need to go. We might want a bigger number. I'm gonna change my spin stuff just to have that try to update a bit quicker. We got a tornado, the whirlwind man. So it's working. We kind of did what we wanted to with the distance. We could apply that final thing. It seems like one of the pieces got missed, or this one wasn't able to fully get in. So it's a bit odd, I think, having some of these shear through each other like that at the end. I don't know what the best solution to that would be. We could try a bit lower of a distance. And then I think I'm just gonna boost that attraction force a little bit more. He couldn't do it. So I think this number needs to be still a little bit bigger. So I don't know, this I have some doubts about doing this collision stuff this way, but it seems like it's the most reliable way to get him back together. This piece too, I think this range just needs to be a bit bigger. The other thing you might want to do is like have a third color or a third state that's like the final assembly that would in the simulation like disable collisions and stuff like that. It depends what you're trying to do. Like could be interesting, but you probably want a bit of like knocking about. Basically these things are able to collide with each other, and then once they get super close to their position, then it will allow them to pass through each other. The other thing that might be cool is maybe doing like, if this condition is met for 1 or 2 seconds or something like that, then disable collisions. Like if it's really trying to get close, then turn them off. But I think this is working pretty well for right now. So let's play around with this stuff and maybe make some more pieces. Let's see how it behaves with this guy at a bit of a higher resolution. More pieces overall. We have 321. This is a kind of a trick or something. If you just look at the amount of packed geometry after you assemble it, then you'll know exactly how many individual pieces or shards or chunks or whatever you have. I think I'm not gonna do this velocity. So we were doing this nice, somewhat procedural masking or whatever. So it was dissolving. It wasn't like an instantaneous explosion. So I'm gonna try to add that back. We'll just mask this other stuff, orbit speed, and suction speed. Did it work? Did something? Should be working. Might be that this pop drag is, I don't know, because I'm disabling it that way. You want R and not B, right? So I have two different masks. You were thinking for just for this. Oh, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, to release, I was using the red X or red channel. Thank you, that was a very good snipe. Yeah, switching between X and Y and then RGB and all that stuff as well. I confused myself. Surprised you were able to catch that. So what I did here with this pop force was just really jack it up. Could go a bit lower with that, and then I'm just gonna turn this back on, properly masked. Aha, we did it. I think I kind of messed myself up with these visualizers. Like, it gets easier to do it once you like actually see this thing change blue. Like, I don't know. I probably should have masked these a bit more. Put a bit more thought into the mask colors and stuff. So we have something. It's kind of cool. I think I don't know if like the timer based approach or something like that, doing basically saying only disable collisions once they've been really close and trying to get in for after a certain amount of time. But yeah, I think we made some improvements. This is a bit more fun to play around with now because we don't have to change a bunch of keyframes. It was like a bit of too many cheats or just too many sloppy ways of things that I was doing yesterday. So some improvements, I would say. Let's just try to push this a little bit more. So I'm going to add a lot more scatter points on the outside of it, like the shell of his face. See what happens with it. Yeah, so I think these colors, like visualizations or whatever, I mean, you could make another visualizer down here that's switching between the different states or whatever, but it just becomes a bit basically what I'm saying right now is like seeing the cyan and yellow colors, it's a bit meaningless. Like I'm using cd.x or the red channel and the blue channel. It would be easier to just see, kind of visualize that directly. You could also do it maybe like a traffic light where like you have green, green means go, yellow means yield, come back, and red is like stop and lock them into position or something. That could be a bit more cool. So again, just visualizing here, we're never getting things like 100% locked in. And then it's just this final step down here that's like sealing, cementing, or we're basically using the distance and say once you start to get close to where you need to be, then really just like override your point position to actually be in your proper position. So I don't know about this orbit stuff being so strong. Maybe turn that down a little bit. I think this amplitude could be cooler with just some different directions or whatever. Need to go to bed. Yeah, of course. It's happy to tackle any like questions or suggestions or stuff people have. I think it's cool to work through things sometimes. See how different people approach it, or I don't know, have a little symposium. I don't know why these colors keep getting kind of messed up like that. Just go like this. So I think with that, wind or with the animated noise. Yeah, have a good night. I think it's just a bit more interesting because it's like fracturing or dissolving or something like that. The pop force just feels a bit like you're just rotating something with like a transform stop. I think maybe something like this. So I just made it more intense, and then reduced the frequency of the noise or the swirl size. This is almost like a pixel. Yeah, I was doing that points from volume, so a lot of the insides of him are like box-shaped rectangles or squares or whatever. Like a pixel, a Wreck-It Ralph guy or something like that. Oh, like a hologram. I don't know, it could be a cool effect for that. Some voxel man or something like that. So I might want to do something with this force eventually to kind of turn it off. That's what's causing this issue, is just at the end that wind force or pop force is still trying to push stuff around. So I think just a quick way to do it, if we just multiply it again just by that blue color. So this one I was using 1 minus to say, like, once I get to that final state, then let me do the force scale. And then this one I'm not doing 1 minus because I'm saying always let me do the amplitude until this final state is locked in. This is a kind of weird way to conceptualize those expressions. I don't know. This way it should work. Let's do a flip book. See if it works. So I think that pop force, instead of orbit, you just get some more natural kind of like stuff blowing around in the wind or something. The orbit is more of a, I don't know, it implies like gravity and a tornado or something. Yeah, I don't know, my stuff at the end I'm doing, it feels a bit heavy-handed. I think that would be the main thing I would try to fix after this, is like getting the reassembly to look a little more natural. Some of these guys, it looks like they're never able to turn off that condition. Like they're never getting close enough to disable collisions, so they're having some issues. But I'm gonna say it's good enough for today. Gonna wrap this up, I think. So we guess we made some progress. Cleaned up, optimized some things, made some more mistakes we need to address in the future. Just do some little steps. You do like a week of working on a project, and you resolve the small issues, and then by the end of that time period you have something pretty amazing. So I don't know if you guys want this geometry. I think I can just do this stash, and then this way it embeds it into the file, like kind of like with Maya. When you save like a Maya scene, it will save all of the verts and whatever files you've like imported into it. Yeah, so this is gonna be, just leave this at version 4. Yeah, so some progress, not final, but some minor improvements perhaps. So thanks for everyone hanging out, giving me the good advice, double checking my mistakes, and figuring out the syntax issues I had. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Sunday, gets outside, gets to bed at a good time, or whatever time zone they're in. We'll be back Wednesday. All right, later.